So good afternoon everyone. For our report, this will be A View About Self by John Locke. So who is John Locke? John Locke is an English philosopher whose work lie at the foundation of modern philosophical empiricism and political liberalism. He was born on August 29, 1632 at Rington, Somerset, England. He died on October 28, 1704, High Laver, Essex. His quotation is, "No man's knowledge here can go beyond his experience." John Locke was a philosopher and physician and was one of the most influential Enlightenment thinkers. The Age of Enlightenment, or the Age of Reason, was an intellectual and philosophical movement that dominated the ideas in Europe during the 18th century. If Descartes described the self as a thinking thing, Locke expanded this definition of self to include the memories of that thinking thing. Locke believed that the self is identified with consciousness, or the five senses of a human. This is usually interpreted to mean that the self consists of memory, that the person existing now is the same person yesterday because he or she remembers the thoughts, experience, or actions of earlier self. For Locke, a person's memories provide a continuity of experience that allows him or her to identify himself or herself as the same person over time. This theory of personal identity allows Locke to justify a defense of accountability. According to Locke, since the person is the same self in the passing of time, he or she can be held accountable for past behaviors. However, Locke insisted that a person could only be held accountable for behavior he or she can remember. Locke believed that punishing someone for behaviors he or she has no recollection of doing is equivalent to punishing him or her for actions that was never performed. He asserted that the state of the person who cannot remember his or her behavior is the same as the state of the person who never committed the act, which meant the person was ignorant. Human mind at birth is tabula rasa, which means that knowledge is derived from experience.
For Descartes, our reasoning ability provides the original of knowledge, a final court of judgment. In evaluating the accuracy and value of the ideas produced, for Locke, all knowledge originates in our direct sense of experience, which act as the final court of judgment in evaluating the accuracy and value of ideas. As a result, Descartes considers an archetypal proponent of the rationalist view of knowledge, whereas Locke is considered as the archetypal advocate of the empiricist view of knowledge. What is empiricist? Empiricist is a person who supports the theory that all knowledge is based on experience derived from the sense. True to his philosophical commitment in grounding his ideas in sense of experience, Locke, in his essay entitled On Personal Identity, from his most famous work, an essay concerning human understanding, engaged in a reflective analysis of how we experience ourselves in everyday lives. In this initial passage, Locke makes the following point, implicitly asking the question of his readers: aren't these the conclusion given by examining your own experience?
To discover the nature of personal identity, we're going to have to find out what it means to be a person. So, what does it mean to be a person? A person is a being that has certain capacities or attributes such as reason, morality, consciousness, or self-consciousness, and being a part of culturally established form of social relations such as kinship, ownership of property, or legal responsibility. Next is a person is a thinking, intelligent being who has the abilities to reason and to reflect. Next, a person is also someone who considers itself to be the same thing in different times in different places. Next, consciousness, being aware that we are thinking, always accompanies thinking and is an essential part of the thinking process. Next, consciousness is what makes possible our belief that we are the same identity in different times and different places. So, consciousness at its simplest is a sentence of awareness of internal or external existence. Despite centuries of analysis, definitions of or explanations and debates by philosophers and scientists, consciousness remains puzzling and controversial. Con- Controversial being, at once the most familiar and most mysterious aspect of our lives. So, I have here that philosopher explains that when we see, hear, smell, taste, and feel or meditate or will anything, we know what we do so. Thus, it is always as to our present sensations and perceptions. And by this, everyone is to himself that which he calls self. Example, consider that you are doing at this moment. You are thinking about the words on the page, the ideas that are being expressed. Are you also aware of yourself as you are reading and thinking? Certainly, once the question is posed to you, you're aware of yourself. Perhaps it's more accurate to say that when you think, you are either conscious or of yourself or potentially conscious of yourself.
What about Locke's fifth point? That consciousness is necessary for us to have a unified self-identity in different time and places. Parang sinasabi na kailangan kilala natin ang ating sarili, kung sino ba talaga tayo, or kung paano ba tayo makisalamuha sa paligid natin. Halimbawa na lamang kung ikaw ay nasa paaralan. May mga tao na mas masaya sila pag nasa paaralan. Kasi nakakasama nila ang mga kaibigan nila, mas nalalabas nila yung kung totoong sila, komportable. Kasi mas komportable sila. Di tulad kung ikaw ay nasa bahay, di naman lahat sa atin ay open sa family nila. Nahihiya tayong magsabi ng mga bagay, problema natin, kumbaga, magbabago ang sarili natin depende sa lugar or sa tao na nakakasalamuha natin. Person or self is a thinking, intelligent being that has the ability to reason and to reflect. Consciousness accompanies thinking and make possible the concept we have of a self that remain the same at different times and different places. Sabi nga kanina na nagbabago ang isang tao depende sa paligid nito. Kaya yung iba di nila kilala yung sarili nila kasi binabago natin yung ugali or sarili natin depende sa lugar o sitwasyon. Kasi natatakot tayo na mahusgahan tayo ng ibang tao.
Human beings are conscious not only of the world around them, but also of themselves, their activities, their bodies, and their mental lives. They are that is self-conscious. Self-consciousness can be understood as an awareness of oneself. René Descartes is a mathematician would agree with Locke's view that a person or self is a thinking, intelligent being that has abilities to reason and to reflect. And he likely will be sympathetic to Locke's contention that consciousness accompanies thinking and makes possible the concept we have of a self that remain the same of different times and different place.
It's a rather gruesome example Locke provides, but it makes his point. Every aspect of your physical body substance is integrated with your personal identity. Hit your finger with a hammer and it's you who is experiencing the painful sensation. But if your hand is cut off, an industrial accident, your personal identity remains intact, although the substance associated with it has changed. You now have only one hand. So, Locke gives good example. Ayun yung pag pinukpok ng martilyo yung daliri nyo, edi ano ba yung mararamdaman nyo? Di ba masasaktan? Ganun yan, parang yung body mo, yung response ng body mo, nandun. The second one is, the cells of our body are continually being replaced, added to, subtracted from. So it's accurate to say that in many ways you are not the same physical person. You were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and so on. Nevertheless, you are likely convinced that your personal identity has remained the same despite these changes in physical substances to your body. This leads Locke to conclude that our personal identity is distinct from whatever substance it finds itself associated with. So, ayun. Di ba yung tayo, siyempre yung cells body natin napapalitan or nagbabago, ganun din tayo parang in 5 years, siyempre, ano na tayo ngayon, student, sa susunod na taon, sa susunod na, in 5 years, baka engineer na tayo, ganun. Tapos, pero yung, despite niya, nandun pa rin yung, kung ano yung pinanganak tayo, yung pa rin yung physical natin, kahit tumingin tayo sa salamin, ganun pa rin siya. Hindi nagbabago. Yung nagbabago lang dun is, yung nagkakaroon tayo ng pimples, ganun. Next slide is self. Self is that conscious thinking thing which is sensible or conscious of pleasure and pain, capable of happiness or misery, and so is concerned for itself as far as that consciousness extends. Locke, 1975, 341. Consciousness joined the body and the soul and forms the person.
So today we're going to talk about John Locke's tabula rasa or blank slate theory. So everybody can pretty much agree that babies are awesome. You have these tiny bundles of human life and you look at them and there's so much potential inside of them. You begin to wonder, what will they become? Who will they be? What will they like? What will they dislike? And this is something that John Locke began to ponder in his essay on human understanding, the work in which he popularized the theory of tabula rasa, which we now know today as the blank slate theory. The theory itself is relatively simple. It basically says when babies are born, they don't know anything. They're a lot like a blank page of paper, and they learn or they have things written on them through the different experiences that they undergo. For example, let's say you have this guy and he's a pretty happy guy and he comes across a fire and he thinks, oh, this fire is really cool. I'm going to touch it. Well, right away, he's going to learn don't touch fire. So his experience with getting burned will teach him that the next time he comes across fire, he should not touch it. Basically, he was a blank slate. His experience taught him something, and now he has some knowledge. These experiences build upon themselves. For example, we might experience yellow or shiny or metal, and we put those together, and now we understand more complex terms like money. And then through more experiences, we might understand that wealth is having a lot of money, poverty is no money, and then eventually things like economics. So, what is the result from all of this? Well, John Locke theorized that because we all start as blank slates, our minds are exactly the same when we're born. There's really no difference between regular people like you and me and a king or a queen or some other monarch. And so John Locke basically said if all people are the same, then we should all have some natural rights like life, liberty, and property. And this will eventually, as you know from history class, lead towards Thomas Jefferson's famous declaration that all men are created equal.